Hi everyone, welcome to TDA Perks Programs. Today's topic is dissection of the new Texas sedation rules 110.16 and 110.17. Our presenter is Rose Dodson. She is the founder and president of Sedation Resource, which is one of TDA Perks Programs' endorsed partners. Rose is also a product developer of the Sedation stethoscope Bluetooth pretracheal and an equipment specialist, and she's given several presentations and contributed articles to the Texas Dental Journal, and we're so happy to have her here today. Let me just give you a quick view of our website and show you where you can find more information about her program, which is endorsed by TDA Perks, on our website at tdaperks.com. If you go to the Programs tab up here, and you drop down to Sedation Equipment and Supplies, you can see all the information about, well, the discount, the phone number, and how to place an order and go to their website. Another great place to hop onto is here, where you'll see a little magnifying glass at the top right corner. You can search for a sedation resource. And, excuse me, it'll populate the page with all the resources that Sedation Resource has supplied with us, for us, rather, and included is two webinars, or included are two webinars that she's given us in the past that cover other sedation rules than the ones that we are going to discuss today. Okay, and with that, I will turn the presentation over to Rose.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. Glad to be with everybody today. And let's see, I know I'm supposed to click something to share my screen. There it is. Got it. Okay, perfect. All right, we're going to jump right in. I know it's a wonderful Friday noon. Everybody's ready to wrap up the week and go home, and we're going to get right into this. So, as she said, this is the rules that we're going to be going over, and I wanted to just say that you can see here listed on this page, we're talking about Title 22, Chapter 110 of the Texas Administrative Code. And there's a list here. You'll see that this is all the other rules. We're specifically going to be talking about 110.16 and 110.17. We'll show you also that the other rules that are listed there we have covered in these other two webinars with TDA Perks, and that's the FAQs about AEDs, and then also navigating the new Texas rules, which covers 12, 13, and 14. So no, I'm sorry, 13, 14, and 15. So that covers those. So if you want more information about those rules, feel free to go into the website as Teresa showed you, and you're able to pull those back up. So what? There's a new rule? If you're kind of like me, you don't like to hear that there's a new rule, especially after the fact. That's kind of what we're trying to clear up today, is to get everybody up to date that yes, there is a new rule, and what are the deadlines to meet that rule, and are you already covered? Because you may already be covered. You just need to know the proper steps to go through to get there, and how to make sure that you've got all of your bases covered. So we're going to talk about if these rules apply to you. What is your three-step process to get authorized for the rules, and then define a little bit about what is a high-def simulator, and then what other courses are available to help you meet the rules and to go through the authorization process. So in terms of the new rule, yes, if you ever want to look up a Texas rule, and this goes from the plumbing board to the dental board to there's all kinds of regulatory boards, but the Texas Register is where you would go and find what is going on in the rules for Texas. And I actually love to copy and paste these little pictures because they come from different schools, and the kids contributed them, and they put them throughout these Texas registers. And if you go on there, you can figure out, if you download the PDF version of the register, you'll be able to see those pictures. Are kind of cool. But we're looking here, you'll see this is the exact wording in the Texas Register for 110.16 and 110.17. At the very bottom, you'll see when it was issued and you'll see the action that has been taken. So you can look there, and sometimes you'll see that it's just been proposed and maybe not finalized, but you'll see the action on both of these rules, that they have been finalized and they have been adopted. So once they've been adopted, that means yes, they are they do take effect, and it is something that you need to be aware of. So when these actually started coming into play was when there was a Texas Senate bill. So it actually started with the 86th Texas legislature, and they passed the Senate bill May 29th of 2017, and they said to the dental board, you will do certain things, and they lined out specifically what they had to do and how they had to change some of their rules. And so the particular rules that we're talking about they were proposed in June of 2018, became effective in September of 2018, September 24th. And then the deadline to meet them is actually September of 2019. So there's been a year between the actual deadline of when it became effective and when the requirements have to be met. It sneaks up on you sometimes, and you think, wow, we've got to have this done by September, and it's April, and I've got to meet all these things. So it's good sometimes to stay in the know on what's happening with the rules. So in terms of, do these rules apply to you? Look at the circle in the very middle at the top. If you have a Texas sedation permit level 2, 3, or 4, then these rules could potentially apply to you. So that's your first question. Now, if it's just a nitrous or it's a level 1, then you might jump off the webinar because this doesn't apply to you at all. This only applies to sedation permit levels 2, 3, or 4. And then you've got the other two questions. Okay, you say, okay, well, I'm a level 3. Okay, well, let's talk about whether or not you see high-risk patients, and we're going to talk about what that is, and then whether or not you see pediatric patients. So one rule applies to the high risk, the other one is to the pediatric. So let's dive into high-risk patients, because this is kind of the gray area. Pediatric is not such a gray area, but high risk is a gray area. And when in the actual wording itself, it tells you, and I don't like to read slides, but this actually says that it is the patient who has a level 3 or 4 classification according to the ASA. So when you look at the ASA classes, you'll see the 1 and 2, and then you've got the 3 and 4. We're going to focus really on 3 because 4 is kind of, really black and white. It's a patient that's got a bad disease that is a constant threat to their life. They could die any day. So there's always life-threatening on that. So it's kind of, if that's the case, then that is a level 4, and there is no question about it. So let's look at level 2. Now, when I was looking for level 2 and I was talking to people on the board, I was talking to different dental anesthesiologists, oral surgeons, everybody seemed to agree that level 3 was kind of difficult to define. Some people are more strict in their guidelines of it, and some are not. But what the ASA guidelines actually say is that it is a patient with severe systemic disease. And I found this blog on Dentaltown, and I don't endorse Dentaltown. I don't endorse whoever it is that had this out, but I found it to be a helpful guide. So if you want to go to Dentaltown and look it up, it's in Everyday Dentistry, and they actually have a whole article written up about defining the high-risk patient. But I thought this little card that they put out was very helpful, and it defines each level. But in their ASA 3, they had these check boxes, patient with a severe systemic disease, and you can read this here. 1 or more moderate to severe diseases. So, high blood pressure only might not be a big deal, but if they've got high blood pressure and diabetes and other things happening, then that's going to put them into an ASA 3. If they're obese with a BMI over 40. So all of these things, poorly controlled diabetes, poorly controlled blood pressure. You've got several things. If they have epilepsy seizures that are poorly controlled, it doesn't mean just because they have high blood pressure only, but if it's not controlled well and managed well. And you can go on and see it. It even covers if you've got someone who's an alcoholic and then they have high blood pressure or some of these other things going on. So this is where it gets into kind of a gray area. And you can see if they have a history of the following in the prior 3 to 12 month period. And that's where they might have had an MI or they had a stroke. And it was funny. I was at an IV sedation course up in Portland about a month ago and doing some teaching there. And we were doing a clinical actually, and they had some patients that were coming in, and they have to get them approved before they would do the IV at the clinic. And so, of course, they came back there and they're like, well, they had a stroke, 2 months ago. Well, that's a no. We're not going to do IV sedation on them until they've had X amount of months outside of that stroke. So that would be an ASA 3, and you would not, be qualified unless you go through this process to actually do sedation on that patient. So you've got to ask that. So I just want to go back to this. So when we start talking about the high risk rules, if you answered yes to the ASA 3 question and you have patients that have poorly controlled epilepsy or poorly controlled, then yes, you would fall in that category. Now, pediatrics is a different story. Very simple. If they're younger than 13 years old, that is considered a pediatric patient. So now let's go ahead and talk about this. So authorization is required. So if you are a level 2 permit holder and you see ASA 3 patients, then you fall under an authorization. You do have to get authorization from the Texas State Dental Board to be able to sedate that patient or pay those patients. And the same thing with pediatric patients. If you were any of these levels and you sedate anyone under the age of 13, then you would have to have the authorization to be able to do that. Now, there's 3 steps for authorization. Number 1, you have to meet the education requirements, and we're going to go into that a little more in depth here in a moment. And then number 2, you have to request authorization, and you have to get that approval. So you have to do that before the deadline. So there is a form on the TDA or the Texas State Dental Board website that you have to get, and you have to fill that out, send it in to the board, and get authorization to be able to sedate those types of patients. So high risk, what are the high risk education requirements? So there's 2 options for that. Option 1, if you can answer yes to this question, I have completed a university or a hospital-based residency at least 12 months in length, check. You have met the educational requirements, but don't forget, you have to do part 2 and part 3. Part 2, you've got to go get that form, you've got to download it, and you've got to submit the request for authorization. And then you've got to get your reply back from the board that says you've been approved. So that's pretty simple, pretty cut and dry. If you meet that educational requirement, then that's your steps and you're done. Now, remember the deadline is September the 1st. Now, what is option 2? You said you can't answer yes to this question. You did not do a residency program, but you want to do sedation for high-risk patients or pediatric patients, then this is what you have to do. So I know it looks a little busy here, but I'm going to break it down for you so that you can understand exactly what this is talking about. And the good news is that there are some people that are doing these courses, and they can clarify it even further. And we're going to give you their contact information here in just a little bit. So look to the left of the screen, and you will see 16 hours of specified board-approved didactic training. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the things that are listed there. You can see it specifically in the rule. When you go and read the rule, there is a list of things that have to be included in that didactic training. So they have specific things that have to be covered in that 16 hours. And then you have to complete 10 high-risk sedation cases. So this is where I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, is what does that mean? So completing 10 sedation cases involving high-risk patients at the level of sedation of the sedation permit held. So if you have a level 3 sedation permit, then you have to do cases that are involving high-risk patients at that level. Now, look at the 3 steps that I have outlined below that. It has to be done and documented under the direct supervision of a dentist who is authorized to administer sedation to high-risk patients. So you've got to get somebody who's already authorized to do that. You can't just have your brother-in-law dentist down the street come over and watch you do some cases and sign off on it. So then it breaks it down even further to at least 5 must be done hands-on by the provider, and no more than 5 can be observed. So yes, you can watch that another person administering the sedation to the high-risk patient, for 5 of them, but at least 5, you have to be the one that was actually administering that or going through the process of administering that and managing that high-risk patient. So, and then lastly, it must either be performed on live patients, or there is an option there for it to be a high-fidelity simulation mannequin. So that's good. You can actually go through a simulation course to get that authorization requirement met. Okay, so that covers you on your high-risk education part. So that's option 2. So we've got that covered. And then second, on the pediatric thing, is the same exact thing. Did you do a residency? If you did, then check, do your authorization form and get approval. Now, their requirements for option 2 is just a little bit different. The 16 hours is still the same, but what on the difference is you have 3, you have 2 choices here on your cases that you can do. You can actually do 3 cases that are performed on a live pediatric patients. So at your level of sedation, so if it's level 2, level 3, you can do that. Do 3 cases performed and then have it signed off on with the supervision of a licensed dentist who's authorized to administer the sedation to pediatric patients. Or if you're not going to do that, then you can do 15 cases performed on live pediatric patients / high def. And they break that down even a little further. So out of those 15 cases, you can observe at a minimum 7 or no more than 7. You can observe 5 and, actually do 10 or whatever, but you can't do any more than 7 that are just observed. And then 8 or more can be performed with high def simulation. So you do have options there. If you don't have somebody that will sign off on you doing 3 cases performed on live patients, then you can go through the simulator option on that. So I think that's pretty clear as far as what you have to do, and you can always go back to this and refer to these slides and obviously go directly to the rule, because I took this straight from the rule in terms of what needed to be done and as far as your requirements. Now, what is high def simulation? So I have a good friend, Rick Ritt, who does a lot of simulation for the ADSA and other people. And he goes into offices and does this. This is a little bit, you can see here on the top right, that's actually a child sim man. And you can see that all the vitals are being displayed on a screen. So this patient is completely hooked up to the blood pressure. They can actually talk. They kind of have a wizard there. I call it the wizard on the computer that can simulate different things that are going on with the patient. So whether it's the blood pressure dropping, the oxygen saturation dropping, they can run through scenarios that might happen with that. And that's what you can kind of expect in your courses. It's a little bit more than, oh, okay, I sedated, I gave him some midazolam, the kid sedated. It's actually, okay, well, what if this would happen while the kid was sedated? That's the whole point of the process, is good education, knowing how to manage it if something goes wrong in your sedation, or if you just go into another level of sedation than you intended. And on the bottom right, you'll see that's an adult, and you can see there's instruction going on. You get hands-on with the process, with the entire simulation process. So that's what high def simulation means. So it's a little bit more than a CPR mannequin that you just throw on the table and do CPR with, like when you're doing your CPR classes or your BLS classes. This is a little more than that. And even if you've done PALS and you've done ACLS, a lot of times that only covers a lot of arrhythmias and different things. This is going a lot more into what things could actually happen if you were sedating a child or if you were sedating a high-risk patient. So hopefully that is clear for you guys. Okay, so let's talk about where you can go to get all these education or meet these education requirements. So there's a few different things. So let's talk about first the didactic portion. So what we have is there's a couple of places that have what is called hybrid courses. So it's kind of difficult to get all 16 hours done and all of the hands-on done at the same time. So what a lot of people have done is develop these classes that have a portion that's done online and a portion that is done through actually I lost my train of thought there trying to get on this website. So this is Southwest Sedation Education. And so this is their website, and you can see here they have several different courses, but they have some specific page there that goes to the 2-day high risk and the pediatrics. And they're doing courses in Houston and Austin, no, I'm sorry, Houston, San Antonio, and Dallas. And you can go here, find out their dates, and they do a portion that's online. There's a total of 20 CE hours, so you get all of your cases, and you can do the didactic or the simulation part, but they do offer both. It's offered by dentist anesthesiologists, so they have a really good course going on there, and I'll let you go discover a little more about that. Where am I at? PowerPoint. The next one is by Anesthesia Education Safety Foundation. Many of you may know Dr. David Canfield, and this is his website, and he is offering courses in the high risk and the pediatric. Now, he does have some specific requirements that you have to meet before you can sign up for his classes. So he does request that you call him directly, and if you've done any of his classes before, you're probably familiar with him. He does his courses in McKinney, and he's got a very limited number of people that he's going to offer the courses to. So get with him and make sure he still has availability. And I will come back to the Southwest Sedation Education in a moment, but I wanted to show you these two do the didactic hybrid courses. And then you've got the UT Health Center. They have a program that is online only. So when you go into their course, you will just go in and search for the sedation course, and you'll find it there in their course catalog, and they offer it. And it's only online, so their entire 16 hours is done online. So now let's talk about the hands-on portion. So there is one course available. TDA actually was really good to put together this course, and they're kind of in conjunction with the Houston online portion. So in order to do this TDA, pediatric sedation authorization, they're calling it, I guess it's coming up, it's this next Friday. So you do the online portion with the Houston group, and then you come in and you do your sedation hands-on part with the courses, the 15 hours of simulation. And then you've got your Dr. Canfield offers his. And then I failed to mention here on Southwest Sedation Education, I wanted to show you, this is actually Dr. Sepulcher is one of the main people on this, and he is a dentist anesthesiologist, and all of your stuff will be directed by him, Dr. Sean Sepulcher, and then Dr. Kuba and Rudy Izzard. So several people here, they've got a great team there that are working together, and they're offering it in 3 different cities. So you can take advantage of those opportunities. So I know that, what did I do? Sorry about that. I know that you do have to meet these guidelines, and just don't forget that the deadline is September the 1st. You may have some questions, and we don't have time actually to do a question and answer section here. So what I want to do is just give you verbally my email address, which is just texasrose@sedationresource.com. And if you have questions about these rules or about how you can meet the rules, feel free to reach out to me with an email. And if I don't know the answer, I will definitely direct you to who does know the answer. I know I've had to do that myself. I find a word or two that I'm not clear on. And I did find out after talking to some of the board members and to some of the people giving these courses, it's not designed to hinder you from doing what you need to do. So don't overthink it. Don't get hung up on a word. If you've got a question, ask them. The main thing is just to have better patient safety, and to be able to be aware that there is a difference in sedating these high-risk patients, and there is a difference in sedating a pediatric patient. It's not just that they're the same. You've got to be aware of the differences and how that your sedation does affect them. So I thank you for your time today. And again, feel free to reach out if we can be of any other assistance to you. Have a great weekend.
Rose.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you very much. Okay. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.